Hello, good morning. I hope you all are doing so well. Thank you for being here. I wanted to talk a little bit about what the current energies are doing, how I am working through them, how I'm experiencing them. And again, the reason I share so much of kind of my process through all of this is because this is what we're all working towards, right? It's how do we express our light out into the physical. So I share my struggles so that people understand this isn't like we just walk in and suddenly we are within our element and everything comes together super easily, right? Because everyone always, this is our big question: who am I? What am I here to do? What is my mission? Where am I going with all of this, right? And it takes some juggling and taking all the puzzle pieces and turning them around and fitting them all together. So this is part of why I share in the way that I do. It's not necessarily scripted all the time. Like, it's never scripted actually, but this is what I do. I just kind of jump on and I talk about the process that I go through in achieving kind of the culmination of the things I want to speak about, right? But it's a very internal. Sometimes it takes days. It's like I have this inspiration and then I'll see things and then I kind of collaborate, put all this information together, and it kind of just starts to flow through me like, okay, this is what's happening here in the fields, right? So it's just about also sharing. This isn't just sharing about the energies, it's sharing about my process that I go through in order to work with these things. So part of what has been going on again, I really felt like I wanted to, my plan was just to take today off. I was going to go back to bed and just kind of sleep until I woke up and then work around the house and get some things done. But that didn't happen. Like, I went back to bed and I could not fall asleep, even though my body is exhausted. So we have this body exhaustion going on. But then we're also working in what I would describe as the subconscious fields now. So, and subconscious in a little bit of a different way, because obviously we know what the conscious mind is, right? We know what we're aware of. But subconscious, it's like we've all been becoming more and more aware of what our subconscious programming is. And yet, it's like feeling this almost density in the, it's a weird way of, I'm not sure exactly how to describe it, but it's like this heaviness through the body, but also knowing it's not necessarily the body, right? But it's, so this is like, and I'm feeling this very much in the divine masculine tone, so this has to do with the physical expression, and it's this kind of lag and drag through the field that we're experiencing, and this is exactly what's been happening to me. It's like I have kind of taken note and taken stock of everything in my life that I know needs to shift, and over these last, let's say, 6 to 8 years, it's like I've been searching, looking for answers, trying to apply things. And in some places I have, right? There have been some shifts that have been made. For the most part, it's like any energy I have put towards it, like physical action and trying to shift things, change things, has not really had an effect, right? So it's been what feels mostly like a waste of energy and a waste of time. Sometimes a waste of money as well, right? But what seems to be happening now is I'm feeling the exhaustion in my body, but yet it's like my subconscious field now is saying it's time to move on these things. It's time to get these things done. So laundry list of like projects around the house and things that need to be addressed that I've kind of put off or haven't quite known how to address. It's like the big bulldozer is coming in, digging deep down into the earth now. And it's like, let's reveal the foundation. Let's look at these cracks that are down here, right? And let's get this all cleaned up and sealed and taken care of once and for all so that we can move forward now. Bear with me. There's a bunch of things actually going on. So part of this exhaustion, I've come to see it as this is the burden of the energies that we have been carrying. So this is the subconscious field, right? Things we were not consciously aware of that we've been holding in our field. Of course, how does this get here? It's a result of the programs, the trauma systems, the fear, all of the stuff that we receive as we come into a human form, right? Our energy field. And however that got in there, right, with all of this kind of distortion. which is really not even the issue. The issue is really just being able to recognize it and to understand that, okay, that was put there without our knowing, but now with our knowing, we can shift that out, right? And that's really the crux of what we need to know. We don't have to go kind of, what is the history of how the distortion got here? We can if we want to, but we can tend to get a little bit lost in that sometimes, thinking that's the work. That's not the work. The work is finding it in our own field to release it out, to show others the way of the path, right, of the light. So when we came in, it's like this experience that we've had in this human form now, we have experienced, we think waking up, right, into the light is like, oh God, oh, now I'm awake and I'm aware. But what we don't realize is everything we have walked through has not actually been who we truly are, right? So it's like now, it's as if someone has come around our backside, right? And they're like, do you realize you have like a luggage rack strapped to your back? And there are like all these suitcases and these bags and all this stuff that you have. And you're like, what? What are you talking about? You know? And then as they start to remove the bags, you're like, what the heck? I had no idea I was carrying all that. So now our subconscious field, right, speaking to the conscious field, it's like this interplay between the two. It's like, wait a minute, that wasn't even who now I feel a little bit, I have to find my bearings now. It's a little bit like the scab coming off a wound, like we have an open wound in some ways, right? There is this feeling of vulnerability, but also this feeling of like, oh my God, this feels amazing. But also, it's so uncomfortable and awkward, right? It's like maybe when you have a cast on and you lose that muscle mass, right? Suddenly it's like, oh my goodness, the cast is off. This feels amazing, but now I have to work to rebuild this density here in the appropriate way, right? That's going to help me walk in a balanced fashion now. So it's a weird space to be, but really, I think the crux of this situation right now is to recognize that this is the subconscious field that's coming up now here. And so it's like, yes, we have an awareness, but also we're aware that there's so much that we're not aware of, but yet we can also feel it and sense it, right? So it's, again, like really awkward feeling. But this is what I'm feeling this exhaustion is. This is this overburdenedness that we have been holding on to not to our knowledge though. But yet at the same time, there's a part of us that also knows this, right? So this is where all this kind of spinning, like, feels like you're trapped in this vortex with all this stuff kind of flowing around, and yet you're centered, and yet you're like, what the heck is going on here? Because we're resolving this disparity between what the conscious mind knows to be as a light being in alignment and what we are holding within the field still, right? So it's trying to come into this space of full alignment. What is the word I want to use? Oh God, I hate this. Not rectifying, but anyway, bringing these two, right, where they can meet, where they see eye to eye, where those two ranges are, I can't figure the word out. But anyway, I hope you understand what I'm saying. So the other part to this now, though, is realizing this subconscious overburdening we have taken on. So there's this weird juxtaposition now where it's like, okay, I wasn't even fully aware of it, but yet a part of me was. The part of me that was aware of it is now saying, okay, I've carried it this far. Because what I'm seeing is that we're at this like gateway, we're at this threshold, we're at this portal, right? We're about to step over into this. And there's this part of us that is saying, and this goes back to what I've kind of been saying in terms of these dark divine feminine energies with the indigo nations, with all the stuff that has held this like healing stuff in lockdown, you know, saying like you have to come through this system in order to heal, which is not true. And that's just a way of these individuals and these fields and these energies validating their dysfunction and their distortion, right? But that's because, sorry, it's all these pieces I'm trying to it's like these fragments from the field, right? And seeing and finding where that placement is in our own field, as we're also recognizing through our own self where we hold these aspects that are not true to us, but yet we engaged with them and we thought that was the way, right? So it's like, okay, this is not mine, but oh, here, this is mine, and that's not mine, but yet I did have that experience which made me believe that this, right? So it's like all of this sorting. It's like pulling out all those Tetris blocks, right? They felt like they fit together so perfectly, but now we're seeing like some of those blocks actually shouldn't even be in our field. So now the whole thing has to get like emptied out and rearranged and put back together. So we're standing at this threshold, at this doorway, this gateway, and feeling these burdens, right? And wanting to release them. But there's this sense of being invalidated and this sense of, oh yeah, I have carried this all this time, but nobody noticed and nobody's thanking me. And yet at the same time, there's this conscious awareness that consciously we weren't aware of it. So how can we ask for validation for something we didn't even consciously know was there? So it's like the field is almost fighting with itself right now, right? So it's like this subconscious and this conscious portion wanting to resolve, right? So it's like we don't even want to have this subconscious field any longer. We want it to come up into the consciousness field. We want it to join and to merge, so that there is no longer this space where we're like, oh, I wasn't even aware that that's what I was running, the program I was running in the background, right? Because that's basically what the subconscious is. Those are the programs we're unaware of, right, that are in our field. So this is trying to come up for resolution. It's really like mediation, right? Like, let's meet at the table, let's put everything on the table, and let's discuss this and see what kind of agreement we can come to here. So these two parts of us are fighting because it's like, I've been totally invalidated all my life and I've been carrying all these things for everyone else. And why am I not getting the thanks and the validation, which would help me? It's not like I want the glory for it, right? We don't want like the gold star or whatever. It's more, that's the way that we are able to release things, right? When someone witnesses, when someone validates, and we're like, oh, yeah, I mean, that's how the human works, right? It's human nature to need that validation in order to release these false identities, right? So that's really what we're looking for. And if you're looking for validation, I need validation, right? I'm here to tell you that, yes, you have been carrying the weight of the world on your shoulders, unbeknownst to you, with no thanks from the world, right? And here we are at this gateway now, this doorway, being asked to drop this. And yet we're like, I just barely figured out that I was even holding it, and now I have to drop it. And it's almost like that victim mentality wants to come in, like, hold on, let me hold the burden a little bit longer. And now as the rest of the world is waking up to the distortion and the fear, we're like, see, we knew all along. We were the ones who were helping you with this, right? Like, so this crazy, like, suddenly do I have 100 different personalities inside of me feeling, right? Like, what is going on here? But again, it's this subconscious rising to the surface to be resolved, which is great because this means that all these programs that are underlying are coming up for clearing. Also not so great if you're not totally aware of them, right? Because you can feel like you're going a bit crazy with this. However, what is important to recognize, I feel the most important part of this, is to recognize where the field is calling out for this validation. Because when we feel invalidated, this is when we can start to stick ourselves into that, right? We can start to go into resentment. We can start to go into this space of victimization and martyrdom. That's the energy I see in these indigo nations, which created this lockdown, right? Which is like, I want the validation. You have to come to me. I need to feel like I'm serving a purpose. Therefore, I'm locking down the fields to say that you cannot pass through this healing unless you come through me. And you must validate me in order to do that. And if you don't validate me, this is where the psychological abuse comes in, right? Because they need that validation. And so notice what I'm saying, right? Like the subconscious field is wanting this right now, right? This validation. These lockdown realms need that validation in order to continue what they're doing, right? In order to stay in their distortion. And why do they want to stay in the distortion? Well, we know waking up and seeing our flaws and our faults and where these programs are running is really hard. It's really challenging. You have to have the ability to completely allow your ego to be cracked, your heart to be cracked wide open, to release all of this out. That is really challenging to do. Even if you are coded to do that, you hold that capacity to be able to do that. It's not easy because it hasn't been shown to us. It hasn't been modeled very well at all how that process happens, right? It's like that means you're weak. What you're supposed to do is stand up for what you believe in, right? And fight for it and like stick your flag in the ground and say, this, I'm claiming this is me. This is what I believe, right? Like that's supposed to be noble and bold and all these things. And yet that's the complete opposite of what this shedding of all these programs is. It's the ability to say, okay, once upon a time I thought that based on what I knew, but now I'm seeing and feeling different things, and I don't know if that aligns with what I'm really feeling internally. And that's the thing, right? It's like if you do not come back to your internal realm, how can you ever realign or recode to who you truly are, right? So that's the difference. It's like this ability to say, oh, hold on, I might have been off in my interpretation, right? Or the facts and the information that I had at the time, this is what it would, the narrative that would have come from that, right? And what I bought into, or what I kind of staked my realm on. But now that's changing. And that's really what we're seeing in the physical world right now too, right? Is like these facts. It's like it's either this or it's either this, and this is where I'm staying. Like there's no in between, and we're not willing to compromise because we're so rooted in our identity of what we're clinging to. And yet that's all a part of the breakdown of these systems, right? Because what it is internal. And this is the only thing that matters. So it's a resolving of all of this, let's say this lockdown, this Indigo Nation energy, which says that you're a person to follow if you look like you know what you're talking about, if you have a strong belief in what you are saying and a strong belief in the system that you are representing and this kind of thing, right? All that is kind of unraveling and coming apart. So, there's a massive clearing that has been kind of building through all of this that will be coming through if you're not experiencing it already. And it is this confused state in the energy field, which is saying, okay, I know I came here to help humanity. Okay, I also recognize that perhaps that's part of an old code, an old light worker system where I shouldn't have taken on as much as I did, but also through the consciousness, it's like, but I didn't know. And if I didn't know, how did I know I wasn't supposed to take it on? But it also seemed like it was already there. So it's this, trying to resolve this through the field, right? And this is what brings you naturally deeper and deeper into your own truth, because you're not going to find that truth external. So really what we're feeling is this pressure, right? I was talking about kind of feeling like we're in this birth canal. This is the pressure we're feeling, which is like, okay, we are now moving forward and we are actually clearing this out. Whereas in the past, over these last several years, it's felt like, okay, wait a minute, things aren't quite what they seem to be. Hold on a second. In the spiritual realm, right? I'm not even talking about the physical stuff, but, and maybe for many, many years now, it's not just the last several, but now it's like, okay, this is coming to light within our own energy fields, and we're having to take steps away from what we had, maybe even the groups or communities we had connected to or bought into and all this stuff. And now we're like, let me find the people who really truly understand what's going on here, who have also experienced what I have experienced in terms of this psychological abuse through the energies. This is also, I have been seeing, I think I talked about this in my sketch video the other day too. There's something going on with the earth, and normally I don't tune into that kind of thing. But there is I really feel like we are being pushed and pressed back into our own heart space to connect with this passion. We can relate it to kind of those passionate moments we felt as kids, right? When we were totally in our joy of our expression. We're being pushed back into that. Let's say that was coded into our field, right? That experience, it's like we can recall that through our conscious mind, right? So this is the beauty of the subconscious and the conscious mind. And now we start to see how, oh my God, nothing was a coincidence in my life. Everything that I experienced my energy field actually knew, like, this is actually really kind of brilliant what's happening here. So that was coded into your conscious mind, right? Those experiences of that exuberance, your joy-filled expression as a child, right? So now that's what we want to draw on. And that's what we want to kind of pinpoint and reseed through our field. Reseed as in S-E-E-D, not move backwards. And so we really are literally kind of in this rebirth process, right? Of bringing back that inner child that knew that expression before all this stuff kind of clamped down through the conscious mind, which then gets almost like now becomes this subconsciousness that drives you unknowingly, right? So very subtle. And in that video I had done, I wrote you a story. That was that example too, right? Like, you're too much, you're not enough. You're too exuberant, you're too boring, kind of thing. It's like, that's the way that they abuse you and the way that they are able to get into even that subconscious realm. It's like that hypnotic, but that's the abuse, right? That's how it occurs. So we have to be aware that, okay, if the conscious mind is upset, like, but I didn't even know, even though I felt something, but how was I supposed to know? That's because you were being hypnotized, right? Through the abuse. And now it's like, okay, that's what we're waking up out of, is this hypnotization through the field into these altered states, like these states of stasis, actually, right? Of being asleep, even while we think we're awake. So this is not a small thing that's happening right now. This is actually really, 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 really massive. And I don't know what to call it, except I keep getting this, like, those kind of sleeping giants waking out of this stasis state. It's this like this grand reclamation of the light, of knowing the light of your field. And yet what's really battling out right now, as I was describing, right, is this subconscious versus the conscious, and resolving that through our own field. Like, okay, but how can I be mad if they didn't know or I didn't know, and like all this kind of stuff, right? But what we don't want to go into is the anger and the resentment, because that's how we start to lock our own field down, right? And connect back into those programs and systems. So just knowing that this is all coming through. I also was going through some screenshots I had on my phone last night, and I realized I had taken a screenshot of sometimes I really hate that I doubt myself so much, because I wish if I had just followed through on these things, like, it would make so much more sense. But then it is exciting sometimes to find these connections and be like, oh my God, I actually knew something. But I had written some things down. I was just getting these like weird, like, things flowing through me. And part of it was, I was talking about this feeling of sewage, right? And this has been coming up a lot recently. But whatever I had written that I had in my phone was from like months and months and months ago. And maybe even longer before that, because I think I was going through old notes from like maybe even years ago now, when I took a screenshot of it. So, but it was talking about, and I think it was even talking about some locations in France as well, right? But it's like this sewage and this feeling, it's relating to exactly what I'm talking about now, because there was so much that I was talking about in terms of feeling overburdened with this exhaustion and all this kind of stuff, this invalidation, which is just this, again, I feel like I have to sneeze here. Excuse me. It's this clearing, right, of our channels, of our field. It's like not even recognizing that, okay, we have our own kind of cleansing system, our flushing system, right? So our sewage system, but not even realizing, like, oh my God, the whole rest of the neighborhood was plugged into our system, right? They didn't have their own system running, they were using ours, kind of thing. And that's really what it feels like. So suddenly it's like waking up to that fact. It's like, oh my God, I don't actually have to hold that. Like, it's your responsibility to get your own system running to be able to clear this out, right? It's not my job. But then how come we didn't, right? So, but those are the systems in the program. So we don't have to get stuck and mired in that. And whatever level of awareness or disclosure you need within your own field, that's what you need to follow through with, right? But knowing that this is kind of the process that's happening right now, as again, we're standing at this threshold of this massive gateway here into the summer, which is going to be this, it's going to be challenging, of course, because this is not something we've had to do yet. But exciting and all of the kind of, I guess it would be disclosure, right? This revealment, but through our own fields. And yes, I'm sure more will come to light in the physical reality, but it's like, it's not stuff that we don't already know anyway, right? So, okay, I think, I hope that covers everything I wanted to talk about, but I just wanted to kind of talk about this, the sense of invalidation, and yet then we're like, well, how can we feel validated when we didn't even know ourselves, kind of thing. And, oh yeah, okay, so this is I almost missed the most important part, right? It's like, why do we actually feel invalidated in the first place? Well, it's because we're not in full alignment to our own light, right? So, and I've experienced this too, and this is, again, something I want to share because this is a part of the process of coming into our own full expression of our light, which is oftentimes we will, and I've had so many people say this to me, right? Like, I don't know what to do. I don't know what I'm going to do or how I'm going to do this, or like, I know I'm here to do something more, right? So we start looking in the external world like, well, okay, I could do like Reiki, or I could do, I like doing energy readings, or I like tarot cards or something like this, right? So it's like, but how do I do that for me? Like, and how do I, and the problem is with that, like, we're already going external, right? So it's like, we're trying to, and I've said this in other videos where it's like, okay, but we're not going into that 3D matrix, that old system, right? We just flow it through ourselves because this is the new. We are the new. It's not like there's this field that we need to like plug into and people are going to be there and we have our own little booth and like, oh, this is the work that I do, right? Like, you create that, you pull that out, you are that new field, right? And as you build your light, people will find you, but you have to do it in your own complete way, which means not worrying about the subscribers and the likes and how you're going to make the money, which is really challenging, right? Because that's what we all feel like, oh my God, I need to shift. I need to do something different. And I need money to live. How am I going to do that? Well, that's already that external influence that's coming in, right? And it can really mess with your head and it can mess with your expression because then you start tailoring your expression to what you think needs to be received in this external reality. And that's absolutely the hardest route, right? I mean, I know we all go through that and it's kind of inevitable that we experience that, but then we get caught in this trap where we're like, oh, but this is what I think people would want to hear, and like, people might understand it better if I say it this way. But if that's not the truth of your expression, it's going to come out and it's not going to fit anyway, right? It feels like that's what we should do because that's what we've been trained to do in this 3D system, right? And this, it's like marketing and clickbait and all these kinds of things, like, right, people love to hear that it's a channel message or it's the Galactic Federation rather than just someone speaking their truth, right? For some reason we need to have this like showy kind of thing. That's where we get tripped up. So the reason we don't feel like we're validated is because we're actually not speaking from the truth of who we are. We're not speaking from our full alignment. And I've experienced this, right? It's like, every once in a while, I'll move into that space where I'm in full alignment and I just let it flow. And it's like, I can feel, again, that passion, right, that I felt as the child, as the young person, that was totally in their exuberance. And I can feel that vibration inside of me, right? It's like I'm buzzing and I get so excited. And it's like, that's when I know that I'm doing it. And I still do not do it most of the time, right? It's really challenging and it's scary. And there are these feelings that come up, right? Like, I'm going to be really vulnerable if I do this, because it does bring us back to that childlike state, right? Which is, oh my God. And like, what usually happened when we did that as a child, right? We got bullied or we got made fun of or whatever, or our parents told us like, that's silly, right? So we struggle with all of that stuff as we're moving through it. But again, this is the biggest reason for the invalidation, but also we couldn't get to that full expression probably until this time anyway, because of all the systems in the program. So to know that it's all okay, you're working towards it. But if you're looking for your mission and your purpose, it's like, you really have to kind of, like, I've said, like, put the headphones on, keep your head down at your desk and just do your work, right? And don't think about like, oh my God, I need to get 1,000 subscribers so that I can do like a live video, and like, how am I going to do that? I should do some other stuff first and then I'll get into what I want to talk about once I have people hooked in, right? Like, it doesn't really work that way with the energy. So again, it is about, it always has been about full alignment, right? But it's, how do we get there and why are we stopped from doing that? And all these are the things that get in the way of that. But to understand that this is all a part of the process. that we're going through. And that's really what the summer is going to be. It's clearing out all of that kind of sewage from other people and our own stuff in order to be able to even feel like we can sit in that true light of who we are. So, okay, I'm going to stop that there. I hope you all have a wonderful rest of your day. Take good care.